When you're working with a woody material like willow, I've already spoke briefly about the tip being a lot stronger than the butt. If at this point I replace my butts with a tip, I'm going from really strong material to really weak material, and that will make a very weak join, and it won't be a good join. It won't look nice, it won't function properly. It'll be really obvious in the basket that I'm making that I've done a join there and it's not a good join. So generally with this kind of weaving, you replace like for like. So if I end on a butt, I need to replace it with a butt. And if I end on a tip, I need to replace it with a tip. So before I start, I've already pre-selected these and they're already similar, but I'm going to just get them together at the tips so that they're exactly the same at the tip. And then because I'm changing on a butt, I'm going to turn it around. Can you see the difference in length? And I'm just going to cut off so that they're the same. It means when I get to the tips, they're all going to be at the same length at the tips. So they'll end opposite each other in my structure, but also they'll be the same strength and thickness as each other as I'm weaving down the rods, which is really important if you want to get good results. I'm going to just pull it to one side and pop the rod in that's going to replace it in the same gap. It just needs to go behind the next stake, and then I'm going to do the next weave with it. So same as usual, this is now number 1. It's going to go on top of number 3, behind and back out. Importantly, when you add them in, you have to do the weave, because if I just pop it in and I pop all 3 in, they're just going to flop around. This is now a good strong join. It's got 2 rods on top of it, so it's weighted down, and I'm replacing like for like. So just doing the same weave as usual, and then 1, 2, 3. So this is now my left one. Do my next weave. So I'm going to carry on weaving with these new rods, this set of 3. Same weave as before, it's always number 1. Has to go in the same gap as number 3, and then out the next gap. I'm already almost at the other rods, so I'm going to replace those. I'm taking my time as well when I'm putting the butt in, because it's really, really strong. I'm making sure that the other 2 rods are pressed down so that they're as low as they can be. And then before I do the weave, I'm just moving the rod across, because that gives it a kink against this stake and it makes it easy for me to weave. I can carry on. They're just going to chase each other. The material I'm working with at the moment is quite thick, so I'm getting the opportunity to really tell my structure, the shape that I want from it. But it's getting increasingly easy to weave as the material's getting thinner. You'll actually go faster by being slower. By being more methodical and more measured in your work, you'll get better results, which ends up being faster. So just go slow, keep setting everything as you go. And then because I went to all of the effort of making all of my material the same, they've ended opposite each other and they're both at the tips. At this point, I'm just going to measure with the other basket that I've made so that you can see the kind of height that you're going to want from your basket. So if you look at my hanging basket here, and where I've got the rope in the middle, when I'm going to add the rope, I want to end on tips. I don't want to end on butts. When you end on butts, that's a very blunt end, and there's no way of tapering them off or hiding them. When you begin with tips and when you end with tips, it tapers off. I'm going to end this here. So I'm just going to do one more weave with those, just trim them down a bit. So I'm going to measure around my basket. So that's round once, that's round twice, and I'll give it a little bit extra for the wrapping around each other. I want to have some length at the bottom, and I want to do that twice, so maybe about that long, twice, and I want to have a handle. So I'm going to say there. I'm just going to tie them in a knot at the bottom, like so. Already done it at the other end. Go all the way to the other end, there. And on my ball of it here. I'm just going to tie that in a knot as well at the end so it doesn't start unraveling. I'm going to get them together and make it in half. So we've got half. And then I'm gonna do the same weave that I've just been doing with 3-rod wale, but I'm doing it with 2, which becomes a pairing weave. So I can start anywhere in my basket, but I don't want to start where I've just finished because they'll get in the way. Put 1 half on the inside of a stick and the other half will be on the outside. So I'm effectively working with 2 weavers. So it's the same weave, we're just working with 2. So it's always the left one, it's always number 1, has to go in the same gap that number 2 is coming out of, that the right weave is coming out of. So it has to go on top of it. It needs to go behind one stake, and then it has to come out the next gap. So they're always following each other. I've got 1 in this gap and I've got 1 in this gap. So number 1 on top of number 2, behind 1. 1 on top of 2. 1 on top of 2, or left on top of right. At this point, I can see that that's the bottom of my basket. So if I'm thinking about my handle, I don't want to weave all the way to the centre. I might want to do something like that so I can have a little play with it. My middle, that's my middle rod. So if I miss those 2 either side and then go back in there, that's going to look nice. I could just start again here, but I'm going to twizzle these around each other at this point because it'll look nice. So I reckon with mine, I think maybe about there. That's a nice long handle. I'm happy with that. I'm going to take one of them. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to go on the inside of the stake that I've decided where I want to start again. Yep, that's correct. So I now have 1 on the inside of the stake and 1 on the outside. I've got the 1, 2, or the left and the right. So it's the left, goes on top of the right and back out. And I'm just following the same weave again. I'm going to follow that all the way to the beginning, which was here. And then I just need to knot it off somehow. From having made lots of these, it looks better if you can weave it through that initial loop that you made. And all I do is make a little knot at the top, like that. And then that's it, that bit's done. I'm going to start with the tips again. And because the tips are really quite thin and weak and I'm starting a brand new thing, I'm just going to cut them down again because it'll make them a bit stronger. I can start anywhere because it's a circle, but I wouldn't start at the top of my handle and I wouldn't start here. And we're going to start it in exactly the same way. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3, and then once they're in each new gap, I'm going to take number 1. It's going to go on top of number 3 and out the next gap. I'm going to take the left. It's going to go on top of the right one, behind that stake and back out. And I'm going to carry that on until just before the halfway mark. 1, 2, 3, and then it's number 1 on top of number 3. Remember, as you're weaving, you're guiding. So I've got my hand on the weave to the left because that's already been woven, and I'm just guiding the willow through. So the willow is doing as little work as possible, and my hands are doing as little work as possible. Going to leave those, move over to my other set. If you find that suddenly you're weaving and it doesn't feel right or it doesn't look right, you've changed the weave. So just stop, have a look. You should be able to work it out. So you're working with 3 rods, they're coming out of each consecutive gap, and number 1 will be underneath the other 2, and number 3 will be out in the gap on its own, but if you follow it back, if you trace it back, it will be going over the other 2. So if you've gone accidentally behind 2, you'll have a gap in your weave. There won't be, so we've got a weaver coming out of this gap, we've got a weaver coming out of the next gap, and then we don't have a weaver coming out of the next gap. It's the next gap after it. So if you make a mistake, just have a look. See if you can work it out. Okay, wonderful. I've pretty much finished. So I'm just going to trim those tips. I'm now ready to weave my border. So I love these borders. It's really, really simple border. And there's a couple of things I need to bear in mind before I start. Just have a look around your basket and make sure that these are all more or less at the bottom. You can pull it through if it's not where it should be. Once I've started this weave, I'm just following a pattern. So I'm going to deliberately kink one of my rods here, like so. And it's going to go on the inside and it's got to come back out somewhere. So say it's going to come out there. The more rods it goes in front of, the smaller your hole will be in the middle. If I look at one of these rods here, so I can count this stake, I've laid it and it's gone to there. It's gone in front of 5 and then it's come back out. If I'd gone in front of 6, the hole would be slightly smaller again. And if I'd gone in front of 7, it would be really small. On the other side, I've gone in front of less because I was working with thicker material. So again, if I take this stake here and follow it through, it's gone in front of 1, 2, 3. So on this side, I've gone in front of 5, smaller hole. This side, I've gone in front of 3, much bigger hole. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to say 5 again because I know that looks good. So I'm moving to the right of my structure and my next stake needs to come out the next gap. So my first one came out of this gap. My second one needs to come out the next gap. So I'm going to go around and keep doing that. Turn it around again. Okay, so this is the last gap where I've got an upright after it. I've still got this gap here. So I still need to lay one down there. Like so, it's in between those two. When I do my next weave now, we have to imagine that these stakes here that are down, they're still up. These are still stakes. So because I have a rod that's coming out of this gap, my next rod has to come out of that gap. And really importantly, it goes underneath. So this first one is just going to go under 1. I've already kinked it. I'm going to go all the way to my tip and feed my tip through. And then I'm going to try and keep a big arch because it's less likely to kink where I don't want it to. This rod that I've just woven with is coming out of this gap here. So my next rod has to come out of the next gap. So I can keep a big arch, feeding it through, and then just pushing it down a bit there to get good results. Next rod, kinking it in the same way. So my last weaver came out of this gap, so my next weaver has to come out of the next gap. And really importantly, that means it goes under 3. So there's no weaving at the end, it goes under everything. Last one. So it's going under 5 and it's coming out of the last gap. There's nothing coming out of this gap. Perfect. Look at that. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take it off its frame. I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to jiggle this board off. So I'm going to do a border on the top or the bottom. I can start anywhere. Do the same process as before. I'm going to kink it before I take it over. And I've done it just high enough that I can fit a willow rod underneath. And then I'm going to decide how many rods I'm going to go in front of. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got plenty of space left. I might go in front of 4 on this one. So 4. So the next one will go in front of 4. But I don't need to count because it just comes out of the next gap. If this one's coming out this gap, the next rod's got to come out the next gap. And the next rod will come out the next gap again. 1. This one's going to go under 2. And I'm just massaging the willow so that it knows. I'm not going to try and make it do that because it will definitely kink. I'm trying to make it curve so it's less likely to kink. So I'm just telling it, and then we'll try and make it go in without kinking. Come on, Willow. There we go. Now, I'll be honest, the likelihood of these not kinking all the way to the end is slim. You tell the material what it's going to be doing, the more likely it is to do that. So don't worry if it kinks at this bit. This is the hardest bit to do, and it's really difficult to do it without it kinking. But if you give it a little massage first, it will be easier to weave and it's less likely to kink. And if it does kink, it'll kink less. So it's always worth telling the material what you want it to do. This is the last one. It's coming out of this last gap. And because I set off a weave that went in front of 4, it's going under 4 stakes. There we go. Okay. So that is fundamentally it. We've got choices now into how we cut this up. Long, short, long, short, long. So that it looks as neat as possible. Have a quick look on the inside, because I will have tips and butts on the inside as well. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Give it a little shake. Oh, look at that. We've now got a very beautiful hanging basket. So you can use it for whatever you like. They look great in a window, look great against a wall, look great hanging from a bookshelf, whatever you like. Really hope you enjoy making yours as much as I've enjoyed making mine. Do let me know how you get on.